There's a lot of great philosophical arguments that point to the rational integrity of God's existence that we have in the treasury of the Catholic intellectual life. One of my favorites is nicknamed the argument from the degrees of perfection. It's in Thomas Aquinas' 5 Ways. It's number 4. It goes something like this. We notice in nature itself all sorts of degrees of perfection. That's a pretty obvious point. You'll notice that we say things like, this is lesser or greater good than that. This is better or worse. This is a better cappuccino than that. That's a better cup of coffee. That's a smarter woman. That's a bigger football player or a smaller football player. We see it everywhere. We're constantly comparing and contrasting things of greater or lesser perfection. Notice that dolphins are smarter than ants, I think. But there's always that comparison. Up and down the chain of beings, we notice that there is degrees of perfections across the board and within species, etc. Now, we also notice that this demands that there must be some measurement by which we can say things are greater or lesser of this or that measurement. Well, Thomas says that infinite degree of perfection we call God. Think of like a measuring stick or a yardstick, right? To say inches, feet, yards, meters, etc., you have to have a standard by which you measure that. You measure a piece of string that's movable and soft, and with a hard ruler, with a yardstick, and it's something like that with God as this source of infinite perfection. We say that everything that exists, including everything in my office right now, is a created being of greater or lesser perfection. Some of the books on the bookshelf behind me are better or worse books. Some of them are in better or worse condition. Well, how do we make sense out of our ability to recognize that those degrees of perfection? And the answer points in a rational but also mystical and spiritual way to an infinite degree of perfection, which we say is God. And that through his act of creation, he mysteriously gives rise to all the things that he's created, which we intuitively compare to him every time we enter into the act of knowing what they are. I think that's a beautiful argument for God's existence, because as you wake up in the morning and you recognize everything laid out before you in the whole universe, from your little bedroom to everything you see till you go to sleep at night, you're implicitly and even unconsciously comparing all things and their various degrees of perfections, not only to one another, but in a deep and sometimes unconscious way, to that immeasurable and infinite degree of perfection, who is God and which God himself has.